let's talk about favorite tools. I think I'm going to do a series about my favorite tools for each of the processes. There's just a lot of tools that go along with pottery, and I was trying to make a list, and I'm like, oh, but I really like these ones, and I really like those ones. So I'm going to try to do a series. I try to do this first one, which is just going over my favorite throwing tools, things I can't live without that I have to have if I'm throwing on the wheel. So yeah, so I promise I will do future videos of like my favorite trimming tools, my favorite sanding tools, tools that I can't live without with my kiln, and things like that. Like, I definitely plan on making more videos like this, just to kind of help, because I know when I was first starting out, there's like so many different kinds of tools, so many different kinds of brands, but for this particular one, I think we're just gonna break it down to things I can't live without while throwing on the wheel. So I'm going to kind of go over what my favorite throwing tools are, what companies they're from, why I prefer those tools over other tools, and kind of just what has helped me with my throwing process. And I'll just go through each of these tools one at a time. So the first thing obviously probably would be the wheel, if you want a favorite tool for wheel throwing. And I don't have a favorite wheel yet. I do like the Thomas Stewart wheel. If you're curious about my thoughts, what my likes and dislikes were, and kind of a specific breakdown of how I've used it and what I like and don't like about it, I do have a video that I will link below, which tends to be one of my more popular videos, which I totally understand, because when I was going through the wheel buying process, there aren't a lot of videos that talk about it. So it was really hard and nerve-wracking to be able to like make that big of an investment when buying a wheel. I do in the future hope to probably get a Whisper, just because I do a lot of video recording and stuff, and that's my biggest complaint, I guess, about the Thomas Stewart, is it's not super quiet. So if I want to do like an ASMR video, which tend to be really kind of popular with pottery, it's really hard to do with how loud the Thomas Stewart wheel is. But anyways, I'll stop ranting about wheels and we'll get on to like the other tool. With having a wheel in mind, my favorite tools probably would be sponges. I know this probably depends on how you throw, but when I'm throwing, I use sponges the entire time. I just find that my consistency is a lot better if I can use the sponges. And then sometimes, occasionally, I like throwing with nails on. You know, acrylic nails, I'll get them sometimes. And it's a lot easier to throw with using a sponge with the nails, because then they're not digging into the clay and stuff. But that's more of a personal preference. So if you are a crazy sponge person like I am, I do have some of my favorite sponges, and they're probably the go-to tool, the tool that I could not live without if I had to only have one throwing on the wheel, would probably be the sponges. So usually what I do is I get the mud tools sponges. So you can see this is they're very well used. I use them a lot, and I do, again, because I use different clays, have ones for red, ones for white. I tend to use the red one for like my browns and stuff too. I also do really like elephant ear sponges if you can find them. They tend to be a little bit more pricey, but those would probably be my absolute favorite. And they last the longest and stuff, but they're a lot harder to find, like good elephant ear sponges. And so I found that mud tool sponges are a really good alternative. And the only downside I think for the mud sponges is they don't really last as long. I use them, they don't last very long. But like I said, I use sponges for everything, so you might not necessarily have that problem. But anyways, yeah, so I like the mud ones. I usually tend to get the blue or the white colored mud tool sponges. A big thing that I use a lot with throwing on the wheel, as far as like shaping and things like that, is ribs. So I actually have two of them. I'm really bad at losing them, so I usually buy a couple just in case. And then also it helps with doing the different clays, because you can say this one tends to be more my red clay. You can kind of see it's stained with the red oxide, or with the iron oxide. And then this one is my white one. This is the only shape color of rib I use. I prefer them to be really flexible and small. Again, this might be a personal preference because I have smaller hands and I'm kind of a tiny person, so these, I really prefer to have smaller ribs that I can actually fit in my hand and be able to shape and stuff. And they're just like a really nice flexibility. I don't really like wooden ribs as much and stuff. I feel like I don't get around the shape. And I also tend to make shapes that are a little rounder and have bigger bottoms and are more curvy. So these ribs are like really awesome and really handy for that. Next up is a needle tool. actually don't really like, because this is from Arteza. I actually don't prefer having the wooden ones. I usually buy the metal ones. They just tend to last longer, and I find that they're actually kind of like a stiffer needle, so you can, you know, cut things off. You can cut through a bigger piece and stuff without warping or changing the direction the needle's going and stuff, because, you know, after you use it for a while, the needle starts shifting one way or the other, or you can bend it and stuff when you're trying to use it. So I find that the metal ones, actually I get less movement with those ones, so I prefer them, but I don't have any on hand. All I have is the wooden one, but the next one is the needle. I don't use this one as much. Like I said, the sponges and the ribs are pretty much what I do for throwing, just in case I want to trim around the bottom of the piece, or if you know, I need to trim off the top, like if I'm shaping and you know, coning and stuff like that. A lot of times if you cone in enough, your clay will get a little wonky and not quite right at the top, and so it comes in handy for, you know, cutting off the rim and making it the rim a more consistent and even. I have this tool right here. This is an XM Tools. I actually really like this one in particular. I absolutely love having wire cutters. My method is I prefer to wire under it and then kind of just let them go. And I like this one because there's not a huge amount of length in it to be able to, you know, lose it or get it twisted. And the wire usually tends to last a lot longer for me because it's a shorter wire. I will say, if you do tend to do a lot of plates or wide bowls and things, this is probably not wide enough. I did recently do a commission, and mostly for this commission they wanted really big bowls and plates, so it was a little challenging to be able to get under it and get the wire like completely under the piece. If you are going to wire under plates and bowls and stuff, I do recommend you get a little bit longer wire than this, but this one's my favorite, like, utilitarian all-purpose one. As far as favorite tools go, if I were to pick a bat, I would say that I prefer having bat systems where they have a bat that's inserted in the middle. I have this one, and then I have this one as well. So as you can see, I tend to use one for my white clays and one for my red. So you can see this one usually gets used for the red more. And they both have plus and minuses. One because of my damp boxes, having a much smaller bat to be able to pull out. So if I show you guys, it kind of just fits in here like that. And I do throw a lot of mugs and cups and things like that, so this tends to take up a lot less space in my damp boxes than like a big old giant bat like this big, trying to stick it in there and to fit multiple pieces in there. So I really do like having these little ones. Having the clay be the same dryness is really important as far as attaching handles to the B-Mix. This is where it comes in handy because I can stick about 6 of them in a damp box, and I have about 3 damp boxes, so that gives me quite a bit of pieces to be able to throw and stuff like that. This bat system, I'll show you really quick, is a little different because the pieces just kind of slide in here like that and kind of just sit there on the surface. And so once I'm done throwing, I will just pull them out. Alright, one more. Probably the least used out of all my tools. I probably, like I said, I use the sponges and the ribs the most, but I do like this one for kind of trimming off the bottom and getting all the extra clay that tends to kind of gravitate towards the bottom while you're throwing. I don't really use this end. As you can see, it's kind of a little bit of a jagged edge. I don't really use this end much. I mostly just use this one. So I usually, you know, put it at an angle to try to trim some of the excess clay off, and it works pretty well for that. I really like it for that. I also use it to clean off the bat, like if I have extra clay, like centering, and like some of the pieces of clay came off, or you know, there's kind of a little bit of a ring on the bottom and I didn't quite get all the clay up into the piece. This is really handy to be able to clean off the bat from the excess clay and slip and stuff that happens to happen and build up around your piece. It's usually just in like a basic throwing on the wheel kit, I think. This one has lasted me forever. I think this might be like the original one I bought with like my first starter kit pottery stuff. I don't think I've really bought one since then. So it'll last you a long time. But I can't remember like what company did it. It was just in one of those, you know, beginner pottery studio things. Sometimes they, you know, if you're just starting pottery and stuff, they sell kits so that you can make sure that you have a wire and, you know, sponge and things like that. Anything you need to like start throwing on the wheel. But I will say the sponges for me aren't really worth it. I do not like the sponges that come in that kit. I also do not like the wires that come in that kit, just because they're so long that like a lot of times beginners aren't going to be making pieces that big. So I don't know. But anyways, I'll stop ranting about the kits. But the one good thing I did get out of that kit was this awesome wooden stick for trimming. So because a lot of times I don't really like the trimming process as much. It's probably one of my least favorite parts of pottery. You know, I mean, everybody has that part of the pottery process they don't really like. Some people don't really like the glazing. Some people don't like the throwing. But for me, the trimming is the part that I don't really like. It took me a really long time to get decent at it. Like, I could throw, and I caught on to throwing decently well, but trimming just took me so long to figure out. And we've always kind of had this love-hate relationship. Trimming and I we don't get along very well. And so this was really helpful when I figured out you could do this with this and with needle tools to trim off, you know, some of the excess clay after you're done throwing the piece so that you don't have as much trimming to do later on. So that is why I like this piece so much, because it kind of saves me from sitting there trimming for long periods of time when it's not really part of the process I enjoy. I think that's about it for kind of my favorite throwing tools. I kind of went over the ones that I really prefer to use and why I like them. So yeah, I hope you all enjoyed kind of learning about what my favorite tools are and why I like using them and why I prefer them, and look forward to more of these videos in the future. Like I said, I'm not sure what frequency I'm going to be doing them, but I do plan on doing one on my favorite trimming tools, my favorite like glazing and sanding tools and things like that. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. See you next time. Bye.